Welcome, everyone. I'm excited to kick off our session today with a focus on grammar and power in writing. We'll be exploring how active voice, along with clear, concise, and direct writing, can truly elevate your communication. This first slide introduces our main themes, highlighting the importance of mastering these skills to make your writing more effective and impactful. Over the next few slides, we'll dive deeper into each of these concepts, so stay tuned and get ready to enhance your writing skills. So let's talk about what active voice actually is. The key idea here is the definition. In the active voice, the subject of the sentence is the one performing the action, the verb on the object. Essentially, it's a direct and clear way to communicate who is doing what. The structure is straightforward, subject plus verb plus object. For example, if I say, "Scientists caught the animals," the scientists are the ones performing the action of catching, and the animals are receiving that action. Another example would be, "Sonia and Jamie started the chess club." Here, Sonia and Jamie are actively doing the starting, and the chess club is what's being started. Recognizing this pattern helps us write more engaging and concise sentences, which is a big part of mastering clear communication throughout this presentation. Let's talk about the power of active voice and why it's such a valuable tool in our writing. First, clarity. When you use active voice, it clearly shows who is doing what. This makes your message straightforward and easy to understand. Next is conciseness. Active voice often uses fewer words to express the same idea, which keeps your writing tight and focused. And finally, directness. Using active voice makes your writing stronger and more engaging because it feels more immediate and confident. Overall, writers use the active voice to make their writing clearer, more concise, and more direct. When we apply this in our work, our messages become more effective and impactful, which is exactly what we want to achieve in this presentation. Let's talk about active versus passive voice, which is a key concept in clear and effective writing. When we use the active voice, the subject of the sentence is actually performing the action. For example, the researcher conducted the experiment. Here, the focus is on who is doing the action, the researcher. The structure is straightforward, subject plus verb plus object. Now, in contrast, the passive voice is when the subject is receiving the action. For instance, the experiment was conducted by the researcher. Notice how the focus shifts. The structure here involves the object, followed by a form of to be, then the verb, and finally, by plus the subject. So it's object plus to be plus verb plus by plus subject. Understanding when to use active versus passive voice is important because it affects the clarity and emphasis of your message. Typically, active voice makes your writing more direct and engaging, which aligns with our overall goal of clear communication. Passive voice, on the other hand, can sometimes be useful when the doer isn't important or when you want to emphasize the action itself. So, as we move forward, keep in mind that choosing between active and passive voice can help you better shape your message depending on what you want to highlight. Now, let's talk about how to identify passive voice. A key indicator is looking for a form of the verb to be. That's is, was, were, or been, followed by the past participle of the main verb. This structure is often followed by and the doer of the action. A common pattern to remember is a form of to be plus the past participle plus by. For example, in the sentence, "The letter was written by Sarah," we see the passive voice. Compare that to the active voice. "Sarah wrote the letter." To help you get a better grasp, we also have a comparison of active and passive voice across different tenses. This helps you see how the structure changes depending on the tense, making it easier to spot passive voice in any context. Understanding these indicators is crucial because it connects directly to our overall goal, improving clarity and style in your writing by choosing the right voice. Now let's take a closer look at how we can determine if a sentence is active or passive. On this slide, you'll see a few sentences, and your task is to decide whether each one is active, which we'll mark as A, or passive, marked as P. Remember, an active sentence is one where the subject is doing the action. For example, in "Kelly did her homework," Kelly is the one performing the action, so that's active. On the other hand, a passive sentence shifts the focus to the receiver of the action. For instance, the sentence was written by Joe puts the emphasis on the sentence itself, not on Joe. Let's look at the third example. The bus was missed by Alan. Now, notice how Alan is the one who missed the bus, but the sentence emphasizes the bus being missed, making it passive. Similarly, Jill blew her nose is straightforward. Jill is doing the action, so it's active. Then, in the keys were lost by William, the focus is on the keys being lost, which makes it passive. Recognizing whether a sentence is active or passive is a key skill because it helps us understand who is performing the action and how the sentence is structured. This understanding connects to our overall goal of improving clarity and style in writing. So, as you go through these sentences, think about who is doing what, and that will help you decide if it's active or passive. Now, let's look at slide 7. We're still focusing on identifying whether sentences are active or passive. Remember, this is part 2, so it builds on what we've already discussed. Here, I want you to read the sentence carefully and decide if it's active or passive. Number 6, the cat laid on the bed. This one is active because the subject, the cat, is doing the action directly, laying down. Next, number 7, the books were sold by Shannon. Notice that here, the focus is on the books, which received the action. The person doing the selling, Shannon, is mentioned after the verb. That's a classic passive voice. Then number 8, Henry won the race. This one is straightforwardly active. Henry is the subject acting directly, winning the race. Number 9, the last donut was eaten by Toby. Again, this is passive because the donut is the focus, and Toby is the one performing the action, but the sentence emphasizes the donut. Finally, number 10, Carol sang the national anthem. This is active. Carol is the subject doing the singing. So the key point here is to identify who is performing the action and who is receiving it. If the subject is doing the action, it's active. If the subject is receiving the action and we see by followed by the doer, then it's passive. Understanding this helps us see how sentences are constructed and how we can switch between active and passive voice depending on what we want to emphasize. Keep practicing this, and it'll become second nature. Now, let's look at how we can transform passive sentences into active voice. This is a really useful skill because active voice makes our writing clearer and more engaging. For example, take the sentence, "The library book was checked out by Ahmed." In this passive form, the focus is on the book and the action happening to it. But when we switch to active voice, it becomes, "Ahmed checked out the library book." This way, the subject, Ahmed, is doing the action directly, which makes the sentence more direct and lively. Next, consider solar panels were installed by Ileana to create electricity. Changing this to active voice gives us, Ileana installed solar panels to create electricity. Again, the focus shifts to Ileana, the person performing the action, making the sentence more straightforward. Similarly, canned goods were collected by the 5th graders for the food drive becomes, the 5th graders collected canned goods for the food drive. Notice how the active voice emphasizes who is doing the collecting. It's more dynamic. And finally, the park is cleaned and maintained by volunteers, turns into volunteers clean and maintain the park. This version is more direct and highlights the volunteer's role. The key point here is that converting to active voice helps clarify who is doing what, making our sentences more concise and impactful. It connects to our overall theme of effective communication, showing how small changes can significantly improve our writing. So, whenever you can, try to use active voice to make your message stronger and clearer. Now, let's move on to the next part of our lesson on converting to active voice. On this slide, you'll see some passive sentences that we need to rewrite in the active voice. The goal here is to make our sentences clearer and more direct. For example, the first sentence, "The winning goal was scored by Tara," can be changed to "Tara scored the winning goal." Notice how this shift makes the sentence more straightforward and engaging. Similarly, "I was called by my mother" becomes, "My mother called me." It's a simple switch, but it helps the sentence sound more natural and lively. Next, the meal was prepared by Jean turns into Jean prepared the meal, emphasizing the doer of the action. And finally, the picnic was ended by Rain can be rewritten as Rain ended the picnic. The key takeaway here is that converting passive sentences to active voice places the focus on the subject performing the action, which generally improves clarity and impact. This is an essential skill for effective writing and communication, aligning with our overall theme of making our language more powerful and precise. Now let's look at some more examples of converting passive sentences into active voice. Here we have the sentence, "The decorations were hung by Carl." To make this active, we focus on who did the action, in this case, Carl. So the active version becomes, "Carl hung the decorations." This change makes the sentence clearer and more direct, which is often more engaging for the reader. Remember, the key is to identify the doer of the action and make them the subject of the sentence. This technique helps to create more concise and lively writing, which ties back to our overall goal of improving clarity and impact in your communication. Now, let's look at how we can revise this paragraph by focusing on active voice. First, the original paragraph states that the Worldwide Fund for Nature, or WWF, was founded in 1961 by British naturalists. Instead of saying it was founded by them, we can say that British naturalists founded the WWF. This way, the sentence emphasizes the action directly, making it more engaging and clearer. Next, the paragraph says that animals and their habitats are protected by the organization. To make this active, we could say that the organization protects animals and their habitats. This shifts the focus to what the organization actively does, which is more dynamic and impactful. Finally, it mentions that today, the fund provides money for environmental proposals all over the world. We can rephrase this as the fund provides money for environmental proposals worldwide. This way, the sentence remains concise while highlighting the fund's active role in supporting environmental initiatives globally. In summary, by changing passive constructions to active ones, we make the message more direct and compelling. This approach not only clarifies who is doing, but also aligns with the overall theme of empowering action for environmental protection. Now, let's look at going the other way, from active to passive voice. This process is important because it helps us vary our sentence structures and emphasize different parts of a sentence. Here, we have 4 example sentences in active voice that we need to change into passive voice. First, consider Anne kicked the ball. When we turn this into passive, it becomes the ball was kicked by Anne. Notice how the focus shifts from Anne to the ball. Second, Jane wrote this beautiful poem. In passive, it becomes this beautiful poem was written by Jane. Again, we're bringing the object into the spotlight. Third, the car mechanic changed the flat tire. Changing it to passive gives us the flat tire was changed by the car mechanic. And finally, he will clean the car every Saturday. When converted, it becomes the car will be cleaned by him every Saturday. This process is reversible, meaning you can switch sentences back and forth between active and passive voices. Understanding this flexibility is key to mastering sentence variety and clarity in your writing. Remember, the choice between active and passive depends on what you want to emphasize in your message. Now let's talk about your writing superpower, active voice. When you use active voice, the subject of your sentence is the one doing the action. This makes your writing clearer and more straightforward, helping your message come through strongly. It's also more concise, which means you can say more with fewer words. Using active voice keeps your readers engaged because it's direct and powerful. So, to sum up, start incorporating active voice into your writing today. It will make your communication more effective and compelling. You're all set to make that change. Go ahead and give it a try.